What's up, guys? Today we're going to be going over what is, in my opinion, the best primary this game has ever seen. It is easily the best legendary primary, in my opinion, the best primary overall, including exotics. This weapon, the no hesitation, is just absolutely insane in every single way. I think a lot of people might know kind of what this thing does, but not fully what it does. So in this video, we're going to be going over exactly everything this thing does, why it is easily the best primary ever. This AR is better than some of the best supers the game has ever seen in a legendary primary. So starting off with this weapon, it has a new frame support frame, flexible and agile frame capable of healing allies and hurting foes. Harming targets builds a restorative charge. Hip firing at allies while this weapon is charged heals them, with rapid healing increasing weapon damage and bestowing restoration to your allies. So breaking down everything this thing does, doing damage with a weapon will quickly charge the healing part, as you see like the U shape underneath the reticle. Very quickly, like 20 bullets fully charges it, and any damage while this weapon is out counts, so you can do ability damage also, and it's very easy to always have this thing fully charged. And with that charge, on the reticle, if you're nearby an ally, you'll see it'll change to a triangle around them, and if you have that available on the reticle, that means you're in range to heal them, and by hip firing the weapon, it will heal them. Then after you heal them for like half a second, it will then proc the healing, so every bullet heals a little bit of health. Then once you hit enough times, it will proc the support frame boost. And for the one doing the healing, all you do is get the support frame boost. You do not get restoration, but for the one being healed, you will get restoration on top of the support frame boost. So looking at the damage increase of the support frame boost, it's going to be a 10% increase to weapon damage. But the thing is, this stacks. So with Radiant is a 25% buff. Getting the support frame boost is 10% on top of that. So it is stacking with Radiant, taking it to a total of 37.5%. And this will also stack with Well Radiance, which is also a 25% buff. So looking at damage on Carl, with Well, it goes up by 25%, proc the support frame boost, and now that same 37.5%. Will also stack with the highest buff in the game, the Banner Shield, which is going to be a 40% buff, and with the support frame boost once again, taking it 10% higher. One thing I found that this does not stack with is Empowering Rift, which is kind of weird, but I mean, most DPS phases you're going to be using Well or Banner Shield, so not that big a deal, just something worth knowing. But it's stacking with Radiant, Well, and Banner Shield is just absolutely crazy. This will give you the highest DPS for not only you, your entire team in the game, and just a free 10% more than everything else. And then left column, we have a perk called Physics, which just takes this thing to a whole new level. So as we showed off, before the healer themselves do not get restoration, but with this perk, you also get restoration. From the point of view of the person being healed, nothing has changed with just the basic version of this perk. It's still just restoration and the support frame boost. The point of the basic version of this perk is just to give restoration to the person healing themselves also, but with the enhanced version, it is now restoration times 2, not only for the person being healed, for the healer themselves. So when I heal Alex, I get restoration times 2 and the support frame weapon boost, and the person being healed also gets the same restoration times 2 and the 10% weapon boost. So now recapping what we've learned so far with the enhanced physics and just the frame on this weapon, you can give yourself and any ally restoration times 2 and a 10% stacking buff at any time on any character on any subclass. Yeah, any subclass, any character, restoration times 2, 10% stacking buff to your entire team whenever you want, as often as you want. It's very easy to charge. You will always be able to do it. I mean, this is just a well of Radiance in legendary form that you can just use on any character. And that's not even it. If we keep going with this weapon, in the right column, there's going to be 2 perks I want to talk about. The first is Circle of Life. Circle of Life will be rapidly healing allies, grants this weapon a period of increased damage. So once we heal an ally by hip firing them a few times, this will be a 25% buff for 10 seconds, which is, once again, you'll have all the time with this weapon. And I think that perk will be really good for hard content, just pumping out more damage with this weapon. I prefer Incandescent overall. It takes this weapon that has no business being good on its own, like this should be just a pure support weapon, and it turns it into a very, very good accurate weapon with incandescent. And yeah, it's just really hard to see a downside of this weapon at all. And if we go even further with this weapon, it is a 600 RPM 21 impact AR, and comparing it to a regular non-support frame AR with the same stats, as you see, the damage of this AR is higher. The base damage is higher on this weapon, and it also does all the stuff we've already talked about. The only trade-off of this weapon is it's not hit scan, it is projectile based, but if you're in AR range, it doesn't feel worse, it just feels different. These things have such high bullet magnetism that if you're in range, they're going to hit. And if anything, it's even more forgiving than hit scan weapons, because even if you're missing with the weapon, it will still like kind of track towards them and hit them. The only time it might feel weird is if something's moving perpendicular to you. At that point, you might have to lead a little bit if they're far enough away. But I've used this weapon a lot. It does not feel worse. It just feels different. And so far, we've talked about this weapon on any character in any subclass, but it becomes even better when playing a solar subclass for the fragments, one being Ashes to help with incandescent, making it even better for the Aclear and spreading the Scorch and Ignitions. This will pair further really well on Warlock with Hellion, which we'll talk about later in the video. But the main fragment is Benevolence. Constantly get the increased recharge rate of your 3 abilities whenever you apply Restoration, which will happen all the time with his AR. And the 2 other fragments, one being Torches to become Radiant, which we showed is stacking with the support frame boost. In the final fragment slot, there's going to be 3. Solus, I think, might be the best overall for harder content. In easier content, you could instead rock Empyrean to just constantly refresh Restoration and Radiant by getting chain kills. And the third one you could use on Warlock would be Singeing, but I think you're going to have your Rift every 20 seconds anyways, which is how long the Hellion buff lasts. So I recommend one of the other 2. The first one for harder content, then Empyrean for easier content. And Solus will give you the Restoration ×2 for 6 seconds instead of 4. And with Benevolence on any character, you're just going to have all 3 of your abilities a lot quicker at all times with this weapon. You're constantly going to be proccing Restoration on allies, which will give you Benevolence for 6 seconds. And you'll just have all of your abilities back very quickly at all times with this AR on any solar subclass. And the Warlock build I'm using is with the new Speaker Sight helmet, where healing grenades spawn a restorative turret, healing allies occasionally spawns an orb of power. And this will do 2 things. The first is the healing turret, which for yourself, every time it hits you, will give you Restoration ×2 and Cure ×2, which, I mean, it's going to be really hard to die with this turret hitting you. And for allies, instead of ×2, it's going to be ×1 of Cure and ×1 of Restoration. But the thing is, we can kind of trick the system, and we can proc Restoration ×2 on any ally with the AR, and then the turret will refresh the timer of Restoration ×2 for them, and effectively make it Restoration ×2 with the turret itself. But the Cure will always just be ×1. And the biggest thing about this healing turret is it is like a splash effect. So as long as your allies are generally near each other, they will all receive the benefits of the turret. So an example in the first boss encounter in the raid, where we're sorting the boss, this would hit all of them at the same time. And further building into the Warlock build with Hellion, the new aspect I haven't gone over yet, the Solar Buddy, when you use your class ability, this thing is just so good and makes this build that should just be pure support into a very respectable, not only damage output build, it's also just great for Aclear. This thing will make enemies ignite every 3rd time it hits them, sometimes 2 if there's other sources of Scorch being applied, for example with the AR itself. It just makes this build not only great for support, it's just a good build period. And just mousing through the other stuff in the build, I've kind of gone over most of it. If you want to slow down and look at what I'm using, you can. Just mostly about just getting your abilities back a little bit quicker. But honestly, with just Benevolence itself, you're going to be doing that anyways. So you can really throw this thing on for boss fights with, you know, time dilation and surges or whatever you really need. You can make it for ammo. The build is very flexible. And the rest of the gameplay will just be a few clips from the day 1 raid. I only recorded our like completions of the encounter, so I don't have maybe the best examples of using this, but I use this all day one until we swap to hunters for the final boss. And yeah, I can't even tell you how many times I completely saved my entire team with the healing of this weapon. I wish I made this video before the raid. I didn't know the 10% was stacking, because I would have obviously been giving my entire team the 10% buff on top of the well. So we could have been doing more damage in the like first boss, which I didn't know. But there was one time I wish I had recorded where Modern and I were the only Warlocks, and both of us had to panic use our well during like the encounter of the first boss. And so we went to sword a boss 25 under, right? And they were all panicking because we didn't have well. And I said, I am the well, and just started throwing down turrets, throwing down healing rifts, and shooting them with my AR. And yeah, I didn't know it at the time because I didn't make this video yet and actually fully break down everything this thing does. Not only was I the well, it's actually a better version of the well because I was also applying Radiant with my melee, which you get back very quickly with Benevolence. So in that clip, unironically, I didn't even know it, I was actually doing more for my team than well itself. I was giving them constant restoration ×2 and the chunk healing of the actual bullets itself, which is higher than well. Well is just ×2 now, that's it. So I was healing them more than well. I was giving them a higher buff than well between Radiant and the support frame boost. So like unironically, that time when we didn't have well and we thought like it was scuffed, I was providing more for my team just with the AR and this build than actually using my super. So just recapping everything again, I think this is by far the best primary the game's ever seen. It does more damage than ARs normally. It gives restoration ×2 to everybody. It gives a stacking 10% buff to everybody, and it just works so well on solar builds. And there's just nothing else quite in the game like it. This thing is as strong as well at its peak in a legendary AR. And yeah, I just don't see myself really ever taking this thing off. And yeah, I think that's gonna be it for the video. Like usual, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.